In this video, I'm going to show you how to think about poker hands like high stakes end boss, Jason Koon. Hey guys, how's it going? Gareth James here for mttpokerschool.com. So a few weeks ago, Jason Koon released this blog called It's the Same Game, but It Isn't. I'm going to leave a link to that blog down below in the description. But basically, he talks about how the game moves slower at the highest stakes because decisions are now much more complex, and this doesn't usually translate to a great spectacle for the viewer. So in the blog, he even says that players competing at the highest levels in poker are faced with similarly complex situations that are difficult to solve, and often it's challenging to understand what these players are thinking about without a fundamental understanding of game theory. He goes on to discuss a typical thought process during a hand by listing out some example questions that he's trying to answer during one of these 10 to 30 second decision points. So I thought what would be a great idea today would be to show you how to answer these questions using PIOSolver. So here's the spot we're going to analyze then. Cutoff opens off around 23 big blind stack. Folds around to hero in the big blind with king 7 off. Hero calls. Flop comes king 7-2 with 2 hearts, hero checks, and villain bets 2 big blinds. So now we can start to think about some of those questions that Jason Koon posted in his blog. But to be honest, we probably should have started thinking about those questions much earlier. So here's the spot we're going to analyze then. So villain's opening off 23 big blinds here for a min raise. If we look at the other stacks at the table, you can see villain 2, the button has 76 bigs, so covers the cutoff. The small blind has around 21 bigs, so that's going to factor into the cutoff's decision here. And then we have 49 bigs. So the cutoff's range for opening here is going to be very different if everybody has 100 bigs compared to him having 23 and then being covered by the button and by hero in the big blind, but also then covering the small blind who's only got 21 big blinds. So this is the 20 big blind cutoff opening range from some GTO preflop solutions. And I think this is a pretty good place to start. So in game, my HUD showed this player to be a little on the tight side. So I think we can start to get rid of some of these hands actually. So we're going to get rid of all of these. And I think this is a little bit more representative of what the player is probably opening in this spot. So if I'm going to call here, I'm probably going to be looking at hands like this, a range that looks something like this. Once again, this has come from GTO preflop solution. I have got rid of a few hands already, the sort of bottom hands of this range. But I think this is, you know, a pretty good range to go with if we believe that the opponent is opening a 30% range from the cutoff in this spot. Okay, so we do call, and the flop comes king 7-2 with 2 hearts. So let's take a look at the equities. This is going to give us a first look at who has the range advantage here. And you can see that out of position has around 37% equity, and then in position has 63%. So right now we can see that in position definitely is going to have a range advantage. If we pull up Range Explorer, we can start to see who has the sort of the most combinations of big hands. So if we click on 2 pair and the sets just to begin with, we can see if we look down here, we can see we've got 19.8 combos for out of position, and then 8 combos for in position. So out of position has a lot more combos of 2 pair plus, but if you look at the number next to it, this selected percentage, if we go back to out of position, suddenly it's just 2.6% of the overall range. Okay, so that's really important. That's what Jason Koon is talking about when he talks about proportion of the range. So just 2.6% of our range is going to be 2 pair plus. In fact, it's just going to be 2 pair because we're not going to have any sets, because if you remember earlier, we said that we were going to jam all of our pairs pre-flop. So we're not going to have any sets. So it's always just going to be 2 pair. But obviously in position can have kings and 7s and also king 7 suited. So yeah, pretty interesting to look at that like that. So we have a slight advantage in this sense, but it's not as significant as some other boards. For example, like a king 4-4 board, we're going to have a lot more 4x than our opponent, and therefore they're going to have to start, taking a slightly different line. So another thing to look at would just be the equities of a lot of our hands. So we're just going to go back to have a look at equities, and you can see that we have a lot of hands that are just really, really poor, have less than 30 or 25% equity in this spot. So when a villain goes ahead and bets small, we still got to fold a lot of hands. So I think all of that together is just going to show us that this board is just going to be overall just better for our opponent, and that means that we should probably just start with a check. So let's just confirm that in Pio. And as you can see, it does say that we want to check. I did give it the option to donk bet here, but you can see that it doesn't do that. It's just a pure check in this spot. Okay, so that obviously took a lot longer than 10 to 30 seconds. But the idea here is that the more of this that you do, the better you're going to get at looking at a board texture and knowing, is it better for me? Is it better for my opponent? There are actually going to be some boards in this spot that are going to be, more range neutral. I'm looking at boards like, 7-6-5, 6-5 deuce, those sort of low connected boards are just going to be much better for us. And I think the strategies are going to change somewhat. Right, so when we do go ahead and check, let's have a look at Imposition Strategy. You can see that there is some checking going on, but most of the time it's just advocating for this small size. You can see it's wanting to go 2 big blinds 82% of the time. So as we check in this spot, it's really important to think about what his strategy is going to look like. And I think that population is probably just going to, bet here very, very frequently. So the SPR here is less than 4, and from the work I've done before, generally the lower the SPR, the more you want to slow play your strongest hands. Now, we don't have any sets in this situation, so this is our best hand, right? And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see if that is true, that we should just slow play in this spot, or do we actually start raising this hand as well? Okay, so let's pull up Range Explorer and have a look at 2-pair. You can see once again we don't have any sets, just to confirm this. I really like this in that you can really quickly see what you're supposed to do with different hands. So if we hover over King 7 off, you can see that we are supposed to do some raising, but calling most of the time. But then King Deuce off is just a call, King 7 suited is just a call, King 2 suited is just a call, and then interestingly 7-2 suited is looking to raise pretty much all the time. So you might be asking, why is that the case? Like, why is there a lot of calling going on with 2-pair here? The reason is that we can't just start raising all of our best hands. So as I said, we don't have any sets here, so 2-pair is going to be our best hand. And if we start raising 2-pair, we're going to be very, very capped going into the turn, especially if we do, as Pio suggests, and I'll just close this and show you, we start raising some of our best King X hands as well. Okay, so again, we're going to look at the Range Explorer here. A really nice tool within PIOSolver, and what you can do is just literally run through and have a look at the strategies for each sort of hand strength here. So here we've looked at 2-pair already. We don't have any overpairs. You can see there's 0 combos. But let's have a look at top pair then. So we are doing quite a bit of raising with the best top pair hands. If I just hover over King 6 suited in the bottom right hand corner of this window, you can see that King 6 of diamonds and King 6 of clubs looks like they're raising quite a lot, and then King 6 of hearts just wants to go for a call. So again, this kind of links back to wanting to just slow play or call with our best hands. So a hand like King 6 of hearts has a lot of equity. If I just click on equity here, you can see King 6 of hearts has 83% equity. King 6 of diamonds, King 6 of clubs have 71.5. So that is what's guiding the strategy here. Second pair then, we're mainly just going for a call. You can see there is some raising going on with Ace 7 suited and some other 7x hands down here. Third pair again just looks like a call, but with some bluffing, I presume, with the bottom of this range. And then ace highs we are folding quite a lot of the time. Really nice that you can see the sort of breakdown of what you should do with your range. So you've got folding, calling, raising, and jamming. So yeah, you can see that ace 9 suited, we're going to call, ace 8 off. We're going to call or continue most often when we have a heart in our hands. You can see here now these weakest ace-x hands probably not good enough to call, but when you have the ace of hearts blocker, you can actually start raising with it. So that's pretty interesting to see as well. Let's have a look at the nothing then. A lot of this is flush draws and backdoor flush draws. So pretty, what we'd probably expect. I think the higher cards here, again, we'd want to have a heart in our hand if we're going to continue with queen jack off. You can see that again in the bottom right hand corner of this window. But then queen jack suited, we've got queen jack of spades, which is again is a backdoor flush draw, and then queen jack of hearts obviously is a front door flush draw. And if we look at flush draws, then we're never folding, so don't ever fold a flush draw in this spot. I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that. So yeah, this is what's going on. We can see that sometimes we're calling, sometimes we're raising. It's pretty much a mix. You can see that our best ace-x hands are going for a call. And then the best king x hands, I mean, this just has so much equity, I guess, that it just wants to push it straight away. But you can see the weaker king x hands, it just wants to go for a call. All right, so king 7 off specifically then, you can see here the number's pretty small, but it wants to call 71% and raise 29%. But if I'm going to right click here, so I can just use my mouse over here, you can see that our exact hand with the king of hearts wants to raise a lot more frequently. So yeah, and actually if you have the 7 of spades as well, it wants to raise even more often. It's like an extra 4 or 5%. So yeah, really, again, this is one of those questions that we need to answer. Our specific hand actually raises a little bit more than, overall. So yeah, we want to be aware that if we are going to mix in this situation, that we're raising a little bit more frequently with the king of hearts. And if we have the 7 of spades in our hand, we raise even more. Okay, so despite having the one combo that gets raised the most frequently, we still went for the call, which isn't a mistake. We should be calling here more frequently than raising. It's just good to have an idea of what combos we should be raising in this spot and which ones get raised more frequently. Now I need you to do me a favor, guys. If you like the way that I went through each of these questions and tried to answer them, then I want you to leave a comment down below and say, yes, can you do a follow-up video for the turn and for the river? This hand does get really, really interesting and I'd love to analyze it for you, but I really need to know from you whether or not this kind of analysis is useful. So if you like this video, then make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done already, make sure you hit subscribe. And until next time, guys, take care and I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.